Welcome to U Talk Sports. Tonight, we will be answering a very important question to fantasy drafters. Which teams are going to be drafting rookie running backs, and how will that impact the running back's value in terms of draft position? We're going to be taking a deep dive into the running back position today. So if you are drafting fantasy leagues this time of year, this is for sure going to give you an edge to win your tournament. Or if you're planning to draft your leagues when we come, you're going to know exactly what to look for when the NFL draft is coming. So today is not about the rookies. Today is not about defense or free agency. Today is a deep dive into the fantasy running back position. As always, here at U Talk Sports, we are the show where you get to be in the show. So if you're watching us live on YouTube and you'd like to come join us here in Zoom, we'll drop the Zoom link there for you. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you participate. We'd love to get your takes. And that's part of what makes this experience and this content so valuable and unique, is that we get takes from different fans, from different fantasy footballers all around the country. So it's not just one person giving you their opinions. We're getting a cumulative aggregate here. So Alex and Jeremiah, welcome to the show tonight. We're going to be diving right into talking fantasy football running backs, and specifically how the draft is going to impact fantasy running back value. We're going to go through every running back in the league, every starting, every backup. We're going to identify who are the best players. So if you're in a deep best ball draft, you'll know exactly who to be taking in your late rounds, who has the best upside. You'll know which players to avoid, where their ADP is too high right now, their average draft position, because that team is likely to draft a rookie running back. And a lot of these might surprise you, but when we dive under the hood, you're going to see that some of these people are being drafted way too early, and it's very likely that a rookie is going to come in, and you don't want to waste one of your picks, one of your mid-round picks on a guy. Zamir White is a great example. Right now, he's a starter for the Oakland Raiders, but what are the prospects of them drafting a running back and him losing that spot? Probably pretty high. Joe Mixon's another guy we're going to talk about. And I love that we have somebody here from Cincinnati. Usually we'll get somebody here from Houston, and we'll really be able to dive in deep because they signed Mixon to an extension. What does that mean? Are they going to draft a rookie running back? Those are the types of things we will be looking at in our deep dive tonight here at U Talk Sports. Later tonight, we'll be shifting over to covering the March Madness. College basketball tournaments are underway. The games are at halftime right now. A lot of them, a lot of the leaders are on the ropes. We'll be checking in on those games starting at 9:30 p.m. But right now, let's dive right into talking about fantasy football running backs. And if you're watching us on YouTube and want to join us here in Zoom, I'll put the Zoom link there. If you're here in Zoom and we need you to just pull up the YouTube show, I'll put the link over to our YouTube show there. And let's start with everyone putting into the YouTube chat who your pick of the night is. We do this every night, and this way we can validate each other's track record. I know my pick of the night and a game I'm going to be watching tonight is FAU, Florida Atlantic University. They had a great Final Four run last year. This year, they have a quality win over Arizona. They've been a little up and down, but they are playing tonight, and I love them to beat North Texas and to cover. And so that's a game we'll be checking in on later tonight. Right now, we're here to dive into fantasy football, and I have laid things out for us to make this really interesting for us to be able to do a really thorough analysis. And I'm open-minded to new information. A lot of the things you guys have shared here have changed my opinions about players. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to come in with rigid beliefs. You want to be open to hearing things from different perspectives. And a lot of the things about coordinators or changes are things that we get insider info in here from fans in the local market that we can't get in other places. Okay, so what we are pulling up here is what I have put together for us to work through tonight. over the next hour or so. And this is the running backs based on where they are being drafted currently. So this is currently based on ADP, which stands for average draft position, where the public is valuing people. It doesn't mean this is my rankings or the ultimate rankings. And we're not really going to be talking about the rankings per se right now. Although if we have time, what I'd like to do in the second half of tonight's show is a fantasy football draft where we just draft running backs. And let's see what order the running backs go in and have everybody say why they're taking this player over what's left on the table. I think that would be really interesting and fun version of the draft we're going to do tonight. So let me show you what this chart, how this chart is designed here. So here are the starting running backs for the 32 teams in the league. And this is in column B is if they have a backup running back who is considered to be fantasy worthy, then that player is listed here. So David Montgomery, for example, would be, if we were doing a top 20 or 30 running backs, he'd be in the list. But for this purposes, what we have on the left here are the starting running backs. Then we have here is the running back who's their backup, if their backup is fantasy worthy. Now, this is important because what that means is that this is someone who they're splitting carries with. And that's something that we're going to analyze today because that can really impact a running back's statistics. One of the best examples of this is Rachaad White. I got to watch a lot of Tampa games. I live in Tampa. I'm from Boston, so those are my two teams. Rachaad White was a top 10 fantasy producer last year, not based on his talent, but based on his usage. There was no fantasy worthy backup there, and he played all three downs. So that's something that we're going to look into today. How does having a fantasy worthy starter impact things? Over here, I've listed the backup for the player overall. But these are not players you would generally be rostering unless for some reason you wanted to take the handcuff. Maybe if you draft McCaffrey for insurance, you might take Elijah Mitchell. But in general, these are players you're not drafting. This is the backup here. So the spots that are marked in gray on this chart, gray is a good thing. Gray means there really is not anyone else in the backfield from my observations, and all of these things are what we're going to discuss today. So gray means there's no one in the backfield that's going to significantly cut into carries or touchdowns for this running back. That's a good thing. That means this running back is getting the bulk of the usage, and that's something that we want to be analyzing here tonight. The spots that I have marked in dark blue are are teams that I feel are highly likely to draft a rookie that will potentially cut into usage. Turquoise, as you see these teams at the bottom here, are teams where I feel, based on my analysis, and it's part of what we're going to discuss, that these teams are going to draft a rookie and that rookie will most likely start. Very light blue to so there's three shades of blue here. The lowest shade of blue would be a team I feel will draft a rookie, but that rookie really will not impact the starter very much. And this is what we're going to look through and analyze here as we go through this together. We're not going to talk about which rookies are going to be taken at this point. We'll have a whole nother episode where we'll analyze the rookies. There's a lot of research still to be done on the rookies by me and by everyone here. But what we want to look for here is opportunities, and we want to look for who to avoid. So I would highly recommend avoiding the running backs that are here in turquoise, because I feel a rookie will win the starting job in these spots. And that's what we're going to start tonight's conversation with. And again, we're not going to focus on which rookie, but what's important for us to come away here, let's say we have a consensus. If we have a consensus that this 1, 2, 3, 4 spots are most likely to go to a rookie, not only do we know to avoid these players, but we know that there are 4 rookies likely to be starters. That's a lot. So we should invest higher in drafting rookies in our drafts. especially if you're drafting this time of year, because there's 4 spots that we feel are pretty sure to be open for starting spots. So 4 rookies likely to be starting if we know that going into the draft, that gives us a big advantage. Now, these spots that are in dark blue, these are places I feel that these teams will draft a rookie, and that rookie has a good probability of cutting into the person's shares, or that running back could be injured, and the rookie could take over. So James Conner is a great example of that. He's an older running back, in my opinion. These are things we're going to go through and discuss. And so I feel it's highly likely that Arizona will use a 3rd to 5th round pick to bring in a running back, and that's a running back you would want to consider rostering in your late rounds as a sleeper, because James Conner is a weak starter. Mixon is someone I would put in this category as well, and that they will likely draft a rookie running back to be the future to groom behind him, and that person could cut into his carries. Rachaad White, same situation. Some of these other situations like Pacheco, I've assessed that situation. That's what we're going to talk today, that I feel they will draft a rookie. There's no one there behind Pacheco, but that rookie's not likely to cut into Pacheco's carries. And for example, in today's analysis, if we determine that Pacheco is going to be a 3-down running back this year for KC, that they're not likely to have another quality running back in the backfield, that's a significant boost for Pacheco. Last year, he was only a 1st and 2nd down running back, was not used on 3rd downs. That's something we would have an edge and would want to move him up in our rankings. So those are the types of things that we are going to get into today as we go through each of these teams. We're going to start from the bottom here. I think Dallas is the easiest one. And let's use the Zoom raise of hand if you want to give a take on the Dallas running back situation. And we're commenting really on the overall situation here, not a specific rookie. Not I think they're going to take Trey Benson. We're not getting into specific rookies here today, but we want to talk about the situation. Do we see an opportunity there? Do we see them bringing in a veteran, perhaps? Do we like anybody that's on the roster that maybe I've overlooked that you know some insights about? That's what we want to get into in analyzing each of these situations. All right, so let's start with Jeremiah. With a take on the Cowboys backfield.
Yeah, hey, the Cowboys are all in, so I imagine they're going to do something, right? No telling which one they're going to pick, but they're definitely going to pick a running back in the draft. But good news for people with Rico, he's the only guy listed currently, so points for him.
Yeah, and if you're playing in a keeper league or a dynasty league, these are things you would want to consider as well in drafting. This would help you determine, like, if we think there's going to be 4 starting running backs this year, these 4 spots here, then we know the first 4 picks in the dynasty draft or redraft are going to be very valuable, right? We know how far it extends. And this also gives you some insights like Rico Dowdle. If you have him, you might be thinking, oh my God, I just landed a starter. It's not likely, right? I think that's kind of saying common sense, but it might become more common as we go. All right, so next let's talk about the Chargers. The Chargers, I expect to run heavy this year under Harbaugh. That's always been Harbaugh's style. I'm staying away from Herbert at quarterback. The Chargers have been unloading their receivers. Keenan Allen getting traded and Mike Williams getting cut. So now they are down to Palmer and the rookie from last year. I expect the Chargers to take a receiver at number 5 to replenish and to look for a running back in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round. Blake Corum, of course, would be a nice fit with Harbaugh. And so this is a situation where I feel it's prime for a rookie to step in and start. Does anyone have a take on Gus Edwards and feel that maybe Gus Edwards could replicate his numbers where he like he did last year? Because he's being drafted really, really late right now. So if you are a Gus Edwards fan, now is a great time to get on him in drafts. He's basically going as behind guys that are nowhere near as productive as him from other teams here. Cameron, would love to get your take on this.
I'd have to say I think I'm all out on Gus Edwards. I think fantasy owners who had him when he was in Baltimore were expecting him to pop off, and there's no excuses for why he didn't pop off in Baltimore. He has a great line. I think injuries is what really slowed him down. So I just expect the Chargers to draft young or maybe grab a young running back in free agency. The running back position is easily replaceable. I think there's only about like 4 or 5 guys who are truly top value in that position. Other than that, you can just plug and play. I think the Chargers are building a good O line. Harbaugh's going in there and changing up the whole scheme, like you said. They're dumping out the receivers to open up all that cap room. I mean, Keenan Allen was eating 20 million on cap this year, so I expect them to load up on that O line and then go young.
Yeah, good take. And I would agree as well. I'm seeing some heads nodding here as well. And we'd love to hear from you in the YouTube chat. If you're watching us and don't feel like coming up in Zoom, feel free to follow along on the YouTube chat. We'll be popping over there to check in as well. And I did want to pull up Gus Edwards' stats. I mean, last year he did have 13 touchdowns, 800 yards, 181 fantasy points. That would put him as a solid top 20 running back last year, but there was an injury that led to that, and it was a phenomenal year. And I don't think anyone really is looking for him to replicate that again this year, at least not anyone here. And that's probably why his draft stock is as low as it is, where he's going. Here behind guys like Kendre Miller and Jalen McLaughlin. Probably he's going to have a little more value than that. I think he could still, be a part of that backfield. But clearly, this is a team that's going to be drafting a rookie. So that's 2 rookies that will be starting that we have identified here so far. Let's hop over to the YouTube chat here. And I wanted to, let's go over everyone's picks here. And I'm going to put mine in here. FAU is my pick. We've got an Iowa State pick, a Baylor pick. That's going to be a really fun game for us to cover later tonight. I feel like that there will definitely be a Final Four team coming out of the Big 12, so I'm excited to lay some eyes on these teams. I watched some of Baylor's second half last night. They had a nice comeback to beat Cincinnati, who knocked off Kansas. All right, so we've looked now at 2 spots here. Next up is the Carolina Panthers. Chuba Hubbard is currently slated to be their starter. Miles Sanders, notice I put Miles Sanders in this category of backups that you should not draft. There is no reason to think anything is going to change with Miles Sanders. I've seen some people taking him as a late round flyer. I don't see the upside there at all. If anyone does, I'm interested to hear. But I do not see him having any chance of beating out Chuba Hubbard. If he was going to, he would have last year. And especially when a third player gets added into the mix, as I expect it might. This would be yet another spot here. So this will be one that I would say is up for discussion here, whether or not they're going to draft a running back. They have a lot of needs. They need to get some receivers in there. What's kind of what would be your take? Let's go to Alex. We haven't heard from yet on Carolina. What do you think that Carolina will they bring in a running back to compete with these 2 guys?
I mean, they are in a world of hurt. I think all around. I think they ride with Hubbard and Sanders because we're not going to expect anything from Carolina this year, right? So I think they got to shore up their line first and foremost for Bryce Young. I could see them maybe taking a running back really, really late, but I think, you got to stay away from both Hubbard and Sanders unless you absolutely need to draft them.
Yeah, exactly. I would not put any. I don't see a lot of upside. We saw what Chuba Hubbard can do last year. It's not much. It's not going to win you anything other than a fill-in and a bye week. Sanders, we for sure would not draft. And I think Alex makes some great points. That Carolina is not ready to win this year. So why invest in a running back? The shelf span of running backs is not very long. Get some O-line, get some receivers, maybe work on the defense, and then come back next year looking to get a running back who can take the whole offense to another level. So we're gonna change the color here. I think I didn't have them turquoise, but we're gonna put them is this light blue, which indicates may draft a running back, but not one that's likely to start. And so one of our overall goals is to have a count of how many teams we think are, how many starting rookies there's going to be. This kind of gives us an idea of how many rookies we should be looking at. All right, let's talk next about the New York Giants. They let Barkley go, replaced him with Devin Singletary. Singletary started for Houston last year, was average, started for Buffalo a couple years before that, was average. He's barely a starting running back in fantasy. Really, you only play him in fantasy because he is a starter, not because he's been able to be consistently good and do anything. He does catch the ball, runs the ball. He's slated to be the New York Giants starting running back right now. There is not anyone noteworthy behind him. So I expect the Giants to grab a running back. What do you think, Jeremiah, about Devin Singletary?
I think he had a good season last year down there in Houston. I don't think there's much help in New York. Just like with Barkley, they're going to stack the box. They don't have no one to throw to as of right now. I don't expect that team to go anywhere.
Yeah, and that
I would stay away from Singletary.
That could be the I would say Singletary, is you're better off. All the running backs that are in the bottom third here are guys you likely want to avoid. The bottom third could be extended as far as here. And you're better off taking someone that has upside to be a star. The bottom third are not going to win you your league. They're just going to get you average stats. And you want to be in the top 20. And again, there's some debate as to who was in the top 20. I like Najee Harris, for example, a lot this year. So yeah, Singletary, I don't see him being very productive. There's some thoughts here that the Giants may or may not, if they're not in win now mode, maybe they don't draft a rookie. So let's be ultra conservative here and let's turn this to this blue, right? The turquoise ones are teams we know for sure are going to be drafting a rookie and that rookie is highly likely to win the starting job. Again, Singletary, it could go either way. I feel like for sure they'll draft a rookie. That rookie will compete, but it'll likely be such a mess there that person is not going to be that productive. Unlike the Cowboys and the Chargers, whoever's starting running back for these two teams has a lot of upside. Like they have potential to be a top 10 fantasy running back. I don't see that kind of potential there with whoever the Giants draft. All right, next.
I have to say, I'm going to watch for Devin Singletary this year because it sounds like the Giants, what they're going to do with their first pick is grab an offensive tackle. And that means they're going to take Neal and bump him down into the guard position. I like Neal. I don't know why he's not working out as tackle there in the New York Giants, but he is an athletic freak at his size. If you can maybe put him down the guard and get that guy pulling, the O-line for the Giants could really improve this next year, no matter who you have in that backfield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing I would say to that, well, I agree with everything you said about the Giants, and there were some things in there you said that I didn't even really know about. So it's a good take. But to me, Singletary was running behind Houston's line, which is pretty good, right? The Giants. So we've seen what Singletary can do behind an offense that's moving the ball, and really he still didn't put up any fantasy noteworthy numbers. So I feel like that's kind of his ceiling, for him to, if the Giants improve their line and use Singletary as the starter, he can likely replicate what he did at Houston, but that's still pretty mediocre, right? If we look at, what Singletary's career stats are, and Singletary is being drafted much higher. If we look at Singletary here, we're talking about 150s, 170, and he's been a starter all three of these years and just hasn't been that productive. 177's not bad. That's like the fringe usually of the top 20. And where I would really point to in here is these are the kind of guys taking a Singletary or a Zamir White, who we're going to talk about next. These guys have in my opinion, a 50-50 chance of losing half their carries or half their job, if not more, to a starter, to a rookie. And so it's better to look for guys that are rookies. And these people, because they're starters right now, the perception is they're safer, that they're better, they're being drafted ahead of rookies like Benson and Brooks. These two guys right now are probably going to start for the Chargers and the Cowboys. They need to be on your short list of sleepers that you want to be grabbing before you get into any of these other players that we're talking about here. All right, so let's continue to look at the board here, and let's talk next about Zamir White. Jacobs left. Zamir White, he played decent in his 2 starts last year when Jacobs was out. Decent, but not really game changing. I think one of those games was the Kansas City game when they got off to, they had like 2 back-to-back defensive touchdowns. So they had a nice lead and could just pound the ball. And Zamir had a 100-yard game. If you just look at the stats, it's impressive, but that's unlikely to be the way this team plays, in my opinion, ongoing. They're just not that good. Their quarterbacking situation is not steady. And I would look for the Raiders to for sure be bringing in a running back that they can lean on. If you want to play defense, which is what the Raiders seem to want to do, right? They spent a lot of money to bring in Christian Wilkins. If you want to play defense, you need to be able to run the ball. And so I look for them to bring in one of the big backs that can smash it. Braylon Allen, for example, and maybe they can groom him to be the next Jonathan Taylor. I look for a rookie to come in here and to be able to start or at least significantly cut into 50% of the carries. Alex, what's your take on Zamir White?
I mean, I agree with your assessment with bringing in another back from the draft, but I think Zamir White has some potential. Granted, it depends on who's going to be the quarterback for Oakland. I think, Justin Fields might be an option to go to Oakland. Like that's still up in the air, right? We don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, they gave Gardner Minshew starting money, so that seems to be the indicator.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, my mind drew a blank there. So then, if that's the case, Gardner Minshew, he doesn't really dump the ball off, I don't think, too much. Zamir White showed a little promise last year when he got his touches. He's a speedster. So I do like the speedster running backs. I think he has some upside, but then again, if they draft a running back, right now he's the number 1. If they draft a running back in the in the 3rd round, let's say, that guy could compete and ultimately win the starting job over him. So it's hard to trust Zamir White right now, but I think he does have some upside if you want to take him late as maybe a sleeper.
Yeah, so interesting you describe him as a speedster. I'm just curious. I wanted to look that up because I have thought of him. He's 6 foot, 215 pounds, as more of like a bruiser. And I'm not really sure what his receiving numbers have not been good. I guess that's in college, right? Where's his pro stats on here?
They turned him into more of a receiver, I think, because they had to, because he's behind Jacobs, right? Jacobs isn't really thought of as a receiving back either. So they tried to. Zamir White's a little bit of a bigger guy, but I think he ran a pretty good 40 at the combine. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but he's a little bit of he's kind of like the average size back, I would say, but he can still scoot a little bit.
Yeah, 6 foot, 215 is a pretty big guy. So, but I think we all agree that they'll likely be bringing in a rookie to lean on. You can't not have a backup, right? They don't have another running back on there. They're going to lean on the run and try to play defense and run the ball, and that's going to be their game plan. So we look for them to bring in another running back to go with Zamir White, and that likely if that running back can be a little more explosive, he'll win the starting job there. And yeah, I was trying to think if there was anything else on Zamir White. So we've identified now 3 starting spots that are likely to go to rookies, with a possible 4th here. Let's continue to kind of work our way up here as we look at this. And this isn't just about the rookies, although that is our main focus tonight, is to answer the question, which teams are going to draft a running back and who does that impact their value and where does that create opportunities in the draft? We've started doing that, but we also want to look into these timeshare type of teams. So we've got Jeremiah here, who is in the Cincinnati area. And I'd love to get your take on what you see here. As I see it, one of these, it's rarely a 50-50 split. But this could be anywhere from 50-50 to 60-40. Either way, in my view, it's not good for the fantasy value of either of these people because they're both going to be taking from the other. And there's just not enough volume in the run game. If we take, all of Mixon's numbers and divide it up, I don't see that there's enough to go around here. Do you see it differently? Do you see one of these guys as the clear starter? And what do you expect to see here, Jeremiah?
I'm signing Zach Moss. I guess that Chase Brown is not the clear starter, but from what I've seen him in a limited role last year, I would start Chase Brown. I actually think he'll be a little higher on this list, no higher than someone like Tony Pollard or Najee Harris, but I definitely see him jumping a couple of spots on this list.
Okay. Good insight from the local team there. And if we look at where these players are being drafted right now, I was going to say, Alex mentioned Zamir White is good as a sleeper. He's not being drafted as a sleeper. He's being drafted at 109, which means fantasy teams in 12-team leagues are thinking like this guy can be your RB2. And that's definitely does not look promising at all. I would not want to bet your team on Zamir White. Chase Brown is being taken in that same spot, which to me has the same risk. Whereas Zach Moss is a little bit lower. Zach Moss's ADP has actually been going up since he signed with Cincinnati. Both these guys are now in a range where even if one of them wins the starting job, the other one's going to be there. And likely they'll ride the hot hand. And one of them will be a 60% carry, and one of them will be a 40% carry. So it's really not going to, for you to try to speculate which one is going to win that, all you're winning is the 60. You're still losing the 40. You're still much better off taking somebody like one of these rookies that are going, after them that have tremendous upside. All right. So that is the Cincinnati backfield. Next is Denver, Javonte Williams. And so Williams, if you look on talent and production, it's not really been there. But I do want to point out, in my opinion, I don't care for his backups. They have Perrine and McLaughlin there. To me, Williams is the clear starter when healthy, and that's a good thing for Javonte Williams. That means that he's somebody that is going to get a lot of usage. And Denver doesn't have a quarterback. They're likely going to bring in a rookie quarterback. They're going to need to lean on the run. And if we think about Sean Payton's MO, it's develop an Alvin Kamara type player. And that's what I see them looking for. And that they are hoping Javonte Williams can return to that. Also, Javonte Williams, if we remember 2 years ago, he had a really bad ACL tear. It was like amazing that he came back in time to start the season this past year. Like nobody really thought that was going to happen, but he made it happen. And then seemed a little rusty. And that's when McLaughlin and Perrine got some carries. He also missed a few games. But Javonte Williams, to me, is clearly above everyone else who's here on this list because he doesn't have anybody that's going to significantly take from his carries. Cam, what do you see in Javonte Williams?
I see a lot of talent, although the fantasy numbers aren't there to back it up. Every time I turn on a Broncos game, freaking Williams looks so darn good. He just jumps off the screen to me. I'm all in on, I don't know if I would take him on fantasy. He's a little bit of a gamble, but I love him as a football player. He's clearly going to be the Broncos' #1 back. And maybe this is the season where he can break into that elite role of running backs because he certainly has the talent.
Yeah, if we go back to his rookie year, he had 183, which put him in about the top 20. Going into his second year, teams were taking him in like the second or third round of fantasy drafts in 2022. He was getting drafted really high. He had a great college career, seemed like a great rookie season. He really came on at the end of his rookie season. And then he got hurt in that first game, 2022. Last year, he came back. We can see his touchdown numbers are low, but his productivity has been there. And he just needs to get goal line carries. I don't see a goal line back on the roster to take those away from him. The offense needs to get a little better, even though they're going to have a rookie quarterback, which usually means the offense is not good. It can't be worse than it was under Russ Wilson. So Javonte Williams is somebody that I like at this spot. Again, at this spot, you're talking about your flex player. You're talking about a backup running back who doesn't have anybody that's going to eat into his carries. His usage is looking to be very strong. All right, let's talk next about the Chicago Bears. And I particularly this is one that caught my eye to look at because in yesterday's show, we had some different people that hopped on from YouTube, just like we always do. And and by the way, let's hop over to the YouTube chat and just keep an eye on what everyone is saying over here. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we'd love to have you here live. It is saying we don't have everyone on Zoom here on YouTube. I'm not sure how it counts that, but if you guys could be sure to open up a browser window and just be viewing this on YouTube, that really helps and makes a difference with us expanding our reach. Just try to, or maybe open it up on your phone. Maybe that is what it is. Maybe let me try that as well here and just see if that makes a difference for us. The link is there. But so yesterday we had two people. When I asked for what do you think is the biggest free agent move that impacted fantasy sports, two people cited DeAndre Swift, that they thought that was the most underrated move that people weren't noticing for fantasy. And it sounded good on the surface. I agreed with them yesterday. You know, he's a talented running back. Caleb's going to be checking the ball down. But then we looked at who else is on the roster, and I think this is something we need to look at a little further. Alex, what are your thoughts about the Chicago running situation?
So they have a good set of three backs. I would disagree saying Swift really moves the needle for the Bears. I'm pretty high on Khalil Herbert if he stays healthy. That's the key for him. There's similar backs too. I was kind of surprised that the Bears offered Swift that money. The Bears have such a horrible offensive line. All these Bears fans, want either Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr., but they got to take a tackle, I think, especially if they don't draft, or if they draft Marvin Harrison, they got to take a tackle at 9. So I don't trust, I guess I went from a fantasy standpoint, I do trust Swift. Swift would be a good pick because Fields and probably Caleb Williams, coming in as a rookie, will look to dump off the ball. He'll get some receptions. And again, Swift can catch the ball. Khalil Herbert can also catch the ball. And then you got Roschon Johnson as more of the bruiser back. But I think all three of them get playing time, kind of like the Philly situation, which might take away some of Swift's draft value. But I kind of like Swift at this 25 position to draft, or in ranking, excuse me.
Yeah, I agree with Alex, what he just said. I mean, Swift has proven that if you can put him behind a good line like he did in Philly, he can be top 5 in the league in rushing yards. If you get just a good line there in Chicago, you already have your running back set.
Well, he's never been top 5 in rushing yards. So let's fact check that here. I mean, he barely had 1,000 yards last year on 5 touchdowns, and that was with 200 yards against my Bucks in one game. I agree with you guys that Swift is a proven commodity. My assessment, though, my conclusion is completely different from yours. I would not be drafting Swift based on usage. I think Alex made a great point that Herbert and Swift are very similar players. And Herbert's in the last year of a low-end contract. Swift got a lot of money. If they can get the same productivity out of Herbert, I think they're going to go with him. And then Roschon Johnson, they spent a high pick on him. I think he was a 3rd-round pick last year. And everything that I read in researching Roschon Johnson was they love him on 3rd downs. They love his pass blocking. They love his catching. They love his speed, that he's going to be the 3rd down guy. Now, this is the only team, by the way, that has 3 running backs that are viable for fantasy. And that's why I highlighted Roschon in yellow here. And so if the carries are last year's productivity for Swift in Philly was behind a good offensive line. He was a mediocre top 20 running back last year.
Well, he was top 5. I mean, I'm looking at the stats right now. 1,049 yards gets you in the top 5. James Cook, Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, and Christian McCaffrey were the only players to rush more yards than him last year.
Well, in terms of fantasy
he was a top
points,
5 running back. No, in terms of rushing yards.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, rushing yards is only part of the picture in fantasy, and I don't think that that's right either. That 1,000 yards puts you in the top five. Are you looking at just the NFC maybe, or
No, and if the rankings from last year, rushing, just type in rushing leaders.
all right? So let's type in rushing leaders, 2023 NFL stats rushing leaders. Rushing. Oh, you're not seeing the screen here. Rushing. All right, so here is rushing leaders. Yeah, but so what is this? What is this even being calculated on here, this number? Here's yards, right? So his yards, his 1,049 yards. And you know, so also I look at this and say, like, there's not much difference, but there's 100 yards difference, which is 10 fantasy points, not even 1 point a game between him and, you know, guys like Chuba Hubbard, right? There's not much difference there that would merit taking Swift. So he's top 5 in yards. His overall fantasy production was not there, right? If we look at his fantasy points for last year, which is really what matters, I don't think he was top 20, but let's look and see where he actually was. We'll go over to Yahoo Sports Fantasy. My concern is if Roschon Johnson is mostly playing on third downs and you lose Swift's in the passing game on third downs, that's a huge hit for him. And then on top of that, if Caleb Herbert is going to cut into some of his carries on first and second down, his usage is just going to be really cut across 3 players. That I don't see that working out good for where he's being drafted. I don't think that, you know, I think his ceiling would be if he could repeat what he did last year. I mean, if he's a top 5, in rushing again this year, I'd be shocked since he's splitting time with 3 people. By the way, Alex mentioned it seemed splitting with 3 people last year. There was not 3 people in Philly's backfield. There was one other backfield who, what's his name? Gaines, right? Or
Gainwell.
Gainwell, yeah. And he barely gets any carries. You know, they use him in kind of some passing situations. There was not a third person. They never really rotated in Penny like we thought they might.
They had Boston Scott, didn't they?
Yeah, he didn't play much last year though. They went with Swift. I mean, Swift was their main guy. I would guess Swift was on the field 80%, if not 90% of the time last year. So here we are looking at fantasy stats by running back, and let's look for Swift here. Right, what? Yeah, he's down here at number 22, with a Kane behind him, right? Who obviously was hurt a lot. So he wasn't a top 20 running back in a PPR fantasy league last year, and I expect his stats will kind of go down. But yeah, we don't have to agree on things. You know, that's what makes this fun. I'm looking at this from a usage standpoint. I think we all agree on his talent. And but to me, I value the usage. I look at that much more heavily. All right, let's talk next about the Redskins. This was one of the more interesting signings because I liked Brian Robinson. I thought the Redskins were pretty good with Robinson last year. He did fade kind of down the second half, but that team kind of fell apart. And he had 9 touchdowns. He showed he was good in the passing game last year. And then they bring in Eckler. So boom, slice the whole pie in half. Now, neither one of them are people that I would want on my fantasy team. Eckler's turning 30. That's always the wall for running backs, kind of like we saw last year. I would expect Eckler to have another year like we had last year. And, you know, Robinson is kind of now giving up some of his productivity to Eckler. They're going to likely bring in a rookie, maybe Jaden Daniels. So he'll be dumping the ball off to the running backs, maybe. But run first, you know, the time that you dump off is like if you're a scrambling quarterback, you don't dump off, you run. And Jaden Daniels is known for his running. So I really am staying away from the Washington situation. Jeremiah, what's your thoughts on Austin Eckler joining the Redskins?
Austin Eckler is not going to help the Redskins out much at all. I don't see them being much better than they
Well,
were
just
last year.
fantasy,
If
just fantasy productivity here.
I see that a similar 60-40 split, and I actually think Brian Robinson Jr. will get the 60% of the touches, where Eckler's getting older and will go down to the 40%.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you might be right. I mean, when in doubt, I like to lean towards youth, and I think teams do as well. All right, let's talk next about the Cardinals and James Conner. James Conner seems like he's been around forever. Remember the year he came in and replaced Le'Veon Bell and was like a smash hit? That seems like so long ago. Le'Veon Bell's been out of the league for a long time, right? But he's not that old, James Conner. He's, I think, 27, going to be 28. So maybe 1 to 2 years left in the tank. That being said, I think it's time to start looking at a running back. The best case scenario for Arizona is that they're draft Marvin Harrison, and that opens things up in the passing game, and that they draft a running back somewhere in the second or third round. In fact, they've been trying to draft running backs the past couple of years to take over for Conner, but they've all been busts so far. So I expect that they will draft a rookie, and that there's a pretty good probability that that rookie could cut into Conner's carry. Cam, what's your take on what to look for in James Conner this year?
Yeah, I'm think I would probably want to get. I think I'd stay away from him, honestly. The Cardinals run a spread style offense, and he's more of a bruiser type of running back, right? Smash mouth running back, gets short yards, first, second down carries. So I think I mean, he had a good year in fantasy last year too. So he's one of those players where he could have a really good year, or this could be the fall off for him. It's just I don't know. I think if I'm Arizona though, with that spread style offense, I'd want a nice speedy back there. Maybe grab someone like Bucky Irving out of the draft. He's supposed to go like in the third or fourth round.
Yeah, that would be a really good fit for them. And that's exactly what I look for them to do. And while there's potential, so dark blue is there's potential for someone like Bucky Irvin to be a starter, but for sure he's somebody that would cut it significantly into the carries. So the people that I'm marking in red, that's the wrong kind of red, are pretty much, I put them on my do not draft list. That there's just too much risk. There's much better options on the table. I put Swift in orange since we kind of disagreed on him. Javonte Williams, we all saw value in. And as far as thinking that this is someone that can be an every week starting running back for you and your fantasy team, compared to the other options that are available, these are the guys we would want to avoid.
Yeah,
as we
I
would
agree.
expect.
I was going to just say, yeah, I completely agree. He's a good player, right? He'll put up decent numbers. I just believe that there's other players out there that can put up bigger, much better value. I mean, I had James Conner on my fantasy team last year, and he did a good job, but he was on my bench all of last year. I never inserted him once into my starting lineup. I didn't feel like he was better than any of the starters I drafted.
Yeah. And I think that the takeaway from here is it's tempting to look at these players that are in red. They're going to fall to you in the 7th or 8th round. And you're going to be like, it's just another starting running back. Why don't I just grab them, right? And that's a mistake, in my opinion. And I think in most strategies, you're much better off swinging for the fences with those picks. Now, you want to have your starter. Once you have your 2 starting running backs and your flex and your starters down, you don't want to fill in your roster with these mediocre guys. That you want to fill in your roster with guys that you can hit a home run on. And those are the guys that we're breaking down in this every episode in this show. We'll get more into our sleepers. First, we need to identify where we think the sleepers are coming from. All right, so let's talk next about Najee Harris. I have been a hater of Najee Harris since after his rookie year, and I've completely turned around on him this year. So the first thing to acknowledge with Najee Harris is, well, Greg, you've been downgrading people that have a split backfield. Harris has one of the better running backs that are out there. Jaylen Warren, I was taking him last year. He was on my sleeper list. He was a guy I was drafting a lot of last year. He didn't really come through. I thought he would actually take over the whole job from Najee Harris. That didn't really develop. And if we look at the stats though for Najee Harris, it was very interesting. So Najee Harris, who's being drafted down here, right around the same place and I love, compared to everyone else who's in the picture here, I love Najee Harris much better than anyone else who's on the picture here. So, but if we look under the hood, while Harris gets a really bad rap, the eye test, his yards per carry is low. He just doesn't seem like he's gonna keep the starting job over Jaylen Warren. He's been able to. He's been productive. If we actually look under the hood at his stats, last year, what felt like a bad year, he was at 181. That put him just outside the top 20 last year. To me, that's his floor. If things stay exactly the same as they were last year, he would get 181. Warren had 165. So the split, the splitting the carries is already accounted for in these numbers. And I feel like this offense is going to get better. Russell Wilson is there and is a big step up from Kenny Pickett. Glad to see they shipped him out of town and are starting fresh. And if we look back to Najee's numbers when in his rookie year, which was the last year Roethlisberger played, Najee was very productive. And where he was very productive was in the passing game. This is what has been lost in Najee's game, is that they don't use him in the passing game because Pickett didn't dump the ball off the same way. Also, Jaylen Warren has stolen some of those carries. So I like Najee Harris. Not that he's going to suddenly be top 10, but I like him to at least maintain at this same number, which makes him a less risky pick than any of the people we've been talking about at this point. Jeremiah, this is a guy who you see a lot. He's a division rival of your Bengals. What's your take on Najee Harris? Can he at least be the same productivity level that he was last year? That's really all I'm banking on here with him, that he's not going to go down.
I don't think he'll go down at all, especially with Russell Wilson at the helm. I actually consider him a lot like Derrick Henry, who also had a slow start to his career. And once his third or fourth year kicked in, we got the Derrick Henry we know now. I'm not saying he's going to turn into the king, but I expect better from him this year than we've seen thus far.
Yeah, I like hearing that. It's different. It's even more positive than I am. I'm for sure not saying that he's going to develop into Derrick Henry or an all-star or anything more than he's been throughout his career. I'm just saying throughout his career, if you actually look at the fantasy stats, they've been there. He's actually been a steady producer for these 3 years, not getting injured, dealing with Jaylen Warren being out. And if for some reason Warren were to get hurt, Najee would get all the carries. And I've actually been liking to get both of them. So I've been drafting here. I expect Najee to finish in the top 20. I like him as my RB2. And I've been drafting Warren in the round right after that as my first bench player. And that way, if one of them gets hurt, it becomes a win. The other one steps up and takes over. But I'm not wasting my bench spot on a player who's not going to play at all. All right,
he'll get more touchdowns too this year with Russell Wilson actually driving him down the field. You know, he'll get those goal line opportunities, which he hasn't had the last couple of years, and that'll significantly impact his fantasy ratings.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. I was while we're on the Steelers, have you heard anything, Jeremiah, about Tyler Boyd? I'm hearing that he might go to the Steelers. The Steelers need a second receiver now.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And he's also from Pittsburgh. So that makes sense.
Nice. Well, I like him then on my sleeper list of guys that would be there. Deontay Johnson, after a good rookie year, has kind of been a letdown there. I think getting rid of him is just as important as bringing in Russ. That's going to really take this offense to another level. All right, let's go next to the Cleveland Browns. This is a really interesting backfield situation. Let's hear from Alex. What do you think we can see from Nick Chubb?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Nick Chubb is one of my top picks when we started our dynasty league, and then of course he has his 2 ACL injuries. I mean, he is arguably top 5, top 8 when healthy running back. You can make a small case for even top 3 if you look at his 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But with the ACL injury, it's going to be tough. I think they draft a running back. What I'm looking at, Chubb's going to obviously be RB1, but could get hurt, right? So you look at their backup, Jerome Ford. He had a decent year last year. He filled in nicely. I'm not sure though. He might regress to the mean. We'll see if he slumps a little bit. But that again, that running back they draft could come in and compete for that RB2 position. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, good. I like getting your take on things, especially knowing that you've had Chubb and have kind of watched him closely. So let's look at Chubb's career here. We've got his career stats on here. I
My
think
worry about Chubb is he could end up being like Todd Gurley, right? Gurley was a great running back when he was in the league. They're actually the same age, but Gurley's been those knee injuries, right? He completely lost his burst. So I'm wondering if Chubb, I know he doesn't really need that burst because he's such a bruiser of a back, but I wonder if losing that step will really affect how he does because he has been top end back in the league.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good analysis there about
And I think he'll bounce back too. He's one of those superstars in the league. He's one of the more humble superstars in the league. When he's out, when he's out in the airport, right? He doesn't care about all the flash and cameras coming his way. He wants to fit in and be like a normal person. And when he's in the gym, he is a gym rat. He lives in the gym. So I think this rehab and recovery, I don't think it's going to be hard for him at all. I mean, he's already been through it once.
Well, I mean, that's different when you're in college. He needed to get through that rehab or he wasn't going to have an NFL career and wasn't going to have any money. Now at 29, he's got a lot of money in the bank. To me, it's more his age. His age is the biggest thing that worries me. Even if Nick Chubb did not have his injury last year, I would be saying do not draft him. 29-year-old running backs hit the wall. We saw this with Austin Eckler last year. We've seen this time and time again. 29 is and that's 29. A lot of these guys, like Eckler, didn't have a lot of miles early in their career. Nick Chubb has had a lot of miles in his pro career, a lot of usage in his pro career. So even if he did not have that injury, just his age, no matter how hard you work, makes it harder to come back and still have the same burst that you had before.
Also, the Browns have one of the best O lines in the league with Joel Patino, Jedrick Ellis, and then that Wyatt Teller guy at guard. Those three are awesome on the line. The Browns are so lucky to have those guys. So you can throw anyone in that backfield. That's why you see these Browns backups always do so good in fantasy.
Yeah, it's a good point about their line that I maybe need to consider more. What I saw from Cleveland last year is they threw the ball. That's how they made the playoffs. Flacco put up career numbers throwing the ball. And with them bringing in Jerry Jeudy, with their tight end, Njoku developing, I think they're going to need to, or they're going to want to be throwing the ball more this year. They saw that work for them last year. I feel like the front office is going to get a lot of heat if Deshaun is a bust. And how can he not be a bust if you don't let him loose? Well, I expect Cleveland to be throwing the ball a lot more this year. The other thing, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love that Jerry Jeudy move. We talk about underrated moves. That could be one of the more underrated moves this free agency. I look for Amari Cooper to be more of a veteran role player for Jerry Jeudy, right? Teaching some things, and maybe you can see a productive season out of Jeudy because he's one of the more skilled route runners in the league.
Yeah, I would agree. With that move, I think that was huge for Jerry Jeudy. He should definitely be on your sleeper list. He's not getting drafted as a fantasy starter right now. And I would move Amari Cooper down a few notches. I was already doing that because Cooper turns 30 this year, but with Jeudy coming in, that's going to cut into Cooper's numbers, I would think. So the other thing I think is interesting about Nick Chubb is that people tend to remember your last moment. It's like, what have you done for me lately? And I think we tend to look at this season, 2022 year for Chubb, 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, and we think that, oh, he's been at this level his whole life. And that's not true. Right. He did in his second year have an amazing season, 1,508 touchdowns. The year after that, he 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards. So even to me, his ceiling I feel like people think that his ceiling is another 1,500-yard season instead of recognizing, no, that was the 27-year-old him. That was his peak time. That was his career year. That was when they ran the ball down people's throats. They had no passing game. Like all the stars aligned for him to have a 1,500-yard season. To me, his realistic number, if he comes back and is fully healthy, fully back to himself, it'll probably be more like this: 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. And I don't think he is going to come back to himself. So, but like the bar starts from 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, and to me, it comes down from there lower. And I also think another factor in Chubb for me is Jerome Ford. Like I like Jerome Ford's productivity last year. Ford, I think for sure will get the third down carries. I mean, Chubb's never really been a third down back. So I like Ford as a guy who's going late. He's going way down the air. I can't even find him on here. I think he's at about 135 or so, 137. You know, if we look at Ford's numbers for last year, 189. And Kareem Hunt got all the goal line carries. So I don't expect Ford to get the goal line carries, but 800 yards, 5 receiving touchdowns, 4 passing touchdowns. I think that's going to impact Chubb because I like Ford as a later round running back pick. So for me, Nick Chubb is on my do not draft list. Is anybody saying that you would draft him to be your RB2? That's kind of what we're talking about at this point. I think he's way too risky to be an RB2. You're saying yes, you would consider him for that, Alex?
Yeah, I think an RB2 he'd be
an every week starter for your fantasy team.
It depends on where you're picking. But I mean, we won't get ahead of ourselves here with our picks coming up here, but my hot take
I
is
mean, the RB1s are basically the top 12, right? So let's say these guys, these guys are your RB1s. So if you're picking your RB2, you're picking from this list of 13 to 24. Right. And so this is your choice. Like to me, there's a lot better choices in that list.
So I'll save my hot take from when we get up to a couple more picks. I'll save my take.
Yeah. So I'm going to put Chubb in orange, meaning some of us would consider him for RB2. Some of us wouldn't consider him there. I would rather have Najee or Javonte Williams, maybe even Swift. Chubb's on my do not draft list. There's just too many risks there. All right, let's talk next about the Titans. To me, this one is the closest to 50-50 split, which means it's a kiss of death for both of them. Jeremiah, what do you think about the Titans bringing in Tony Pollard?
I think they brought him in for exactly what you said, to be a 50-50 split type of guy. The guy gets more yards, better plays, we'll end up seeing the 60-40 share of the split. And I feel the Titans were comfortable letting Henry go with his age and knowing Tajay's right behind him. Guy had a pretty decent season last year, backing up the King.
Yeah, I like Tyjae Spears. I was really watching him. Granted, I only watched his highlights, but I was really watching him as somebody that I would have my eye on for next year because I thought Derrick Henry would be gone. And I was excited that Henry would be gone. Tyjae Spears would get to be the starter. They'd maybe bring in, I thought they'd bring in like a Gus Edwards to be the backup, and Spears would get 75% of the carries and be on my list, like as a guy I love for my RB2. I was so disappointed that they bring in Tony Pollard. It's going to kill Spears's utilization. And now neither one of them are people that I would want to draft, that I would trust.
Jeremiah,
if you're looking in this category here, of people that are like 14 to top 20. Does anybody like Spears? Do you like Spears or Pollard over this list that's here? This is kind of
I'm not sold on Ramondre. I'm definitely not sold on Kamara.
Yeah, let's not go into, I agree. When we get to those guys, they're just as much there for me as well. And that's why we need to identify who do we like. And we also, what's important about this is to identify like, okay, I know I need to get my 2 running backs before these guys are gone. Like, and look at where these guys are going in the draft. Cause I don't want to get stuck with any of these guys that are in red here. And I would say, I'm going to put them all in red. I'll even put Spears in orange. Like I really like him. He looked like a good football player It's really just his situation really busted that for me. All right, let's talk about Ramondre Stevenson next, and Antonio Gibson coming to town. Jeremiah, what do you think about this situation?
I'm getting not sold on anything what the Patriots are doing right now. I don't see a lot of productive offense whatsoever with the pieces they have, much less from the running back position. I feel it'll be a team you stack 9 in the box and make whoever's going to play quarterback beat you, whether it be Jacoby Brissett or bringing someone in.
Okay. Cam, what are your thoughts on Ramonde?
So I love Ramondre Stevenson. It's the situation it's the Patriots, right? Who's going to be the quarterback for them? Who's going to bring them down the field to get the touchdowns, right? And they might even have a rookie quarterback leading the helm. But as Stevenson, I love the guy. I mean, Damien Harris? That was his name. He was the starting back there in the Patriots, but they shipped him out of town because Stevenson, when he touched the ball, he was the better running back. He got more yards. He was what Damien Harris was supposed to be. And Harris wasn't a bad player either. Harris was a good player. But I think Stevenson, I like Stevenson. I like the Patriots O-line. I looked at them to run more this season just because they don't have any receivers. I mean, I don't really trust Kendrick Bourne and Devontae Parker. I think they paid him too much money to be their weapons. So, yeah, I think Stevenson should have a pretty good year. Better than Tony Pollard for sure.
Better than last year?
Better than Tony Pollard.
No,
I think
better.
he'll have a better.
So let's look at this by the numbers here. So I agree with Cam. I love Ramondre Stevenson. I think he is explosive, exciting. If you look at what the Patriots are doing, I feel like they want to win games playing defense and running the ball. Whether it's with Jacoby or a rookie, they're going to lean on the run. So there is huge opportunity here. And if we look at Stevenson, this was a shitty Patriots team here, and he had 1,000 yards. They extensively used him in the passing game this season, 69 catches, 429 here. This was the year, as Cam mentioned, Damien Harris was there. I think he had 10 touchdowns that year. Harris got all the goal line carries. So there's a lot of production in New England's running game. The problem with last year was Zeke came in, and Zeke ate up the numbers, and the offense got even worse last year. And Stevenson missed a few games with injuries last year. So his numbers tanked. He was not somebody you could depend on to be an RB2 last year. So just like Cam said, it's the situation that is the problem there. And so looking into this year, if New England did not bring in a free agent, I would say that even though it's a bad situation, Ramonde has this type of upside that he could do what he's done before in this bad offense, that he could have these same type of numbers, especially with this passing number. And so I was liked Ramonde as an RB2 until they signed Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson makes no sense to me. He's the same type of running back. He's a guy who's good in the passing game, can also run. He had 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns his rookie year in Washington. They're the same type of guy, which to me says this is going to be a split situation. And so if I'm betting, and Cam, this is what I was trying to ask you and still want to get your take on. If I'm betting, is Ramonde going to be back to this? This is what he's capable of based on talent in this offense. But this is what happens when he's splitting time with someone like Zeke. Is he more likely to be this, maybe a little better than this, but that's still not RB2 material at all. Not somebody you can depend on. Which one of those totals do you think he's more likely to? We'll go to Cam and then Alex on this.
I'm going to lean towards the ceiling. Obviously, if you look at Elliott, he's getting older. He did not look good.
Zeke's gone. They brought in, Zeke's gone. They brought in Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, and Gibson, I mean, who the hell is that guy, right? I would never draft him on my fantasy team. So, I'm all in on Stevenson.
Well, Antonio Gibson, I mean, if you remember this season, he had numbers the same as Stevenson. He had a fantasy this year. He was solid. In 2022, he was going in the second round of those drafts. He looked like a young rookie, a young emerging running back for Washington. And then basically, Washington kind of shit hit the fan. And last year, they barely used him at all. But if you look at his passing game numbers, Gibbs, he's very steady in the passing game. I think it's a horrible fit, a horrible usage situation, and that he's going to push Stevenson's numbers down. I expect, and I actually like Gibson. He's going really late, 190, 175. He's moved up a lot because a lot of people seem to like him, but late, like super late. He's a proven guy there. Alex, what are your thoughts about the usage between Stevenson and Gibson?
So one of the reasons why Washington didn't like Gibson is he puts the ball on the ground. He's got a fumbling issue, and that's widely known too. I was just looking at the stats. I know he only lost 4 fumbles, or excuse me, 2 fumbles last year. But again, he was on my fantasy team just as like a depth piece last year, and he's putting the ball on the ground quite a bit. And I know that Ron Rivera wasn't liking that. And coaching staff wasn't liking that. So that's something to look at with Antonio Gibson. Not sure about Ramondre's. I don't think he has a fumbling issue. So I'm not sure if you know that, Greg, but I think that could affect his usage too. You could see Stevenson or Ramondre's usage shoot up if Gibson continues to have fumbling issues.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point and insight that I didn't know about because I actually thought Gibson could fit in well with Washington last year. I thought he could be with Eric Bieniemy going to Washington. I thought they could use Gibson as the third down running back there. But Alex, I'm curious, like if you think about players over their career, who like do you think has a career of being known for fumbling? To me, it's a seasonal thing. Like it gets in your head. You just have some fluke fumbles. I don't really think that's something like that you can't tighten up and just by paying more attention to detail. Do you think that's something that follows people for their career?
I mean, it's a loaded question, I think. So as Packer fans, we Aaron Jones has a fumbling issue too.
Adrian
Again,
Peterson used to fumble the ball a bunch.
Peterson definitely fumbled the ball a bunch. And Aaron Jones would fumble in the playoffs. So he'd fumble at really crucial times. So I think players are remembered for obviously the timing of the fumbles, but
yeah. Well, in Peterson, I would say it looked like he fumbled a lot because his usage was so through the roof.
Yeah.
I don't really think if you think about like a fringe backup player who's known for fumbling, I can't think of any, which to me says like usually this is something that they maybe had a fumble in a bad spot, so it's very memorable. Like Jones's fumbles are memorable, but or maybe it was even a bad season, but I don't think that's something that really follows people.
Well, I mean, if indeed and the rumors are true, it kind of does follow Antonio Gibson, right? Washington didn't keep him, so maybe the Patriots are like, we're gonna fix it, right?
Well, it's not rumors; it's facts that you're giving us.
I mean,
I love. Yeah,
I heard it because he was on my fantasy team, and I was wondering why. I know Brian Robinson's a good player, but I was wondering why Gibson was not getting the usage I thought he would get last year, and they mentioned like fumbling issues. So
yeah.
I mean, I'm guessing that fouled him. And then Patriots never turn the ball over, right? They have always won turnover battles for the last decade. That's probably part of Belichick, but maybe they fix him. Maybe they took a gamble on him.
Yeah, it seems like an odd fit to me. If anything, I thought Stevenson with Damian Harris was a great fit. Harris was the goal line back. Stevenson got all the passing game stats. That's what blew up Stevenson's numbers to the ceiling, was getting all the passing stats. So bringing in another running back that's this same profile, it makes me think that I don't want either of those. And there's also the risk that the whole show just shits the fan in New England. If they have the worst quarterbacking in the league. I'm hearing they might bring in Tannehill, but that still doesn't give me any more faith that this team is going anywhere on offense. If they draft Drake May, I'm not sold on him either. So that's another like red flag to me with Ramonde. There's so many more people that I like better on this list. All right, let's go next to Joe Mixon in Houston. We don't have our Houston guys here tonight, but we've got Jeremiah, our Cincinnati guy, here tonight. I know you've given us your take on this before, but let's hear it for this episode. So what do you expect to see from Joe Mixon in Houston?
I expect him to fit in Houston well. step right into what Devin Singletary was doing last year and then some. Hurts the people who had any hope for Damian Pierce, obviously. I believe Houston ended up re-signing Joe for 3 years, 27 million-ish. He should get the bulk of the carries and should be a top 15 pack in fantasy this year.
Yeah, I think top 15 would be conservative for him. And he's one of the more underrated players in fantasy, in my opinion. The last 3 years, if
really
you look at his numbers, he's 241 last year. I mean, that's like top 5 in fantasy production. And it was a high-powered offense he was a part of. And I
the
will
biggest
say,
problem with him for yearly fantasy is he's hit or miss. He had a game against Carolina a couple years ago where he scored 5 touchdowns, but didn't score for like 8 games on either side of it. So for this best ball you're referring to, I think he'd be excellent, but he is hit or miss. He's going to have big games.
That's a good point. And that game, that was 2022. I remember because my daughter drafted him in the first round. I kind of told her to, and he did not score all year. And then he went nuts. He had 4 or 5 touchdowns in one game, and he only had 7 that whole year. And that kind of really inflated his numbers. Again, in best ball underdog, it's more rotisserie style, so that's okay. But in regular fantasy, that is an issue, his hot and coldness. But to me, I think that kind of ebbed and flowed with, like, they were going to Ja'Marr Chase at the goal line. I don't see Houston having a goal line running back. I think this is important in the analysis. When Cincinnati gets down to the goal line, you can just throw it up to Ja'Marr Chase, right? He's great at that. When Houston gets down there, Tank Dell is tiny. Nico Collins is more of a speedster cutting around. They're going to need to pound it in when they get down there, or else they're going to have to settle for 3. And I think that could be really good for Mixon.
Does that hurt losing Mixon, Jeremiah, as a Bengals fan? And does it hurt to see him go? Or
no, he played his role here. I'm kind of glad to see him go. I wanted more touches for Chase Brown. He's a really fast guy. Got up to one of the faster plays last year in the NFL. I want to see him have more opportunities. I wish Joe nothing but the best, though, man. Good luck in Houston. I hope to see you in the AFC Championship game.
Nice. So I think we all see a lot of potential for Houston with Mixon, at least for this year. Definitely not so much in Dynasty League. He is 27, but that's your peak. Damian Pierce, we heard some great insights from the Houston people about how he just does not fit in with the scheme of the offense that came in. The rookie year was a different coach, different OC, different scheme. It's a different scheme now, and he does not fit in. So he should not be on your sleeper list unless he gets cut. He could fit it. I mean, imagine he could go to the Cowboys and start for them, but he's not going to get playing time in Houston. And that means that's why I have them in blue here as a team that's likely to draft a rookie. And anytime you're drafting a rookie, it is possible that rookie is going to cut into your numbers. And but Mixon has always had a really good backup behind him. Chase Brown, before that, Samaje Perine. And Mixon's put up those big fantasy numbers even with the backup. So despite I have them being in blue, meaning they're likely going to draft a rookie, and that rookie might play significantly, I still see Mixon in green. If anybody else has any takes on Mixon, we'll take those. Otherwise, let's move on to talking about the Saints and Alvin Kamara. Go ahead, Cam.
17. I love Kamara, man. I think he's too high on this list. Like, what's going on? He's 7. So I drafted him on my fantasy team last year. He's one of those guys I was talking on the show yesterday about how I like to grab guys that are injured to start off the season or suspended to start off the season. And that was one of my strategies last season and why I won my league. I grabbed Kamara in like probably the 5th round because he was suspended to start off the season, and he still finished the league, I believe, top 5 in fantasy points at his position. And because this is the reason why. It's not because he's getting rushing yards. Hell, it's not even because he's getting receiving yards. It's because he's catching the ball out of the backfield. In PPR leagues, he is so valuable. I expect Derek Carr to do the same thing. His receivers won't get open. Just dump it off to Kamara and hope he can get some yards. So that's very valuable. I think he should be in the top 10.
All
And I
right, so
think
let's just fact check this. So he's not in the top 25 by total, obviously because he missed those first 4 games, but that does impact your overall season here. We're now at about the top 30, the top
well, so maybe it was at by average. It was by average when he came back. So when he was
yeah.
back in so the games he played in, because I think he started off the season with the 4 or 5 game suspension.
Yeah, he missed those 4 games, that's for sure. So let's look again here by average and just see where he comes in here. He's still not in the top 25 by average. So I know it felt like it. It felt like he had a great year. And he definitely had, I mean, I remember him having games where he was having 10 catches, like you said, but the productivity in fantasy is not there. Did I miss him somewhere? I would have guessed he's in the top 20 or 30 by average, but we still haven't seen him unless we missed him somewhere. Let's just back up here. Oh, here he is. Okay, yeah. So he was in the top by average. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, top 5 by average. And let's drill into the numbers for Kamara some more here. So last year's games down the stretch, these last 4 games, fantasy playoffs, not great, but not totally bad either. He had some big games in here when he first came back. He had fresh legs, obviously. This was that game. He caught 14 balls at 14 targets, 12 catches, 13 catches. That's unreal. Like that's how great he is. But I also don't know how much he's going to be able to replicate that.
And also, when you put on the tape too, when the ball is in his hands, it's clear he is the Saints' best player on offense. He breaks tackles. He's great in open space. I mean, he hasn't showed any signs of slowing down to me, at least when I watch the Saints.
Yeah, to me, his career kind of mirrors Eckler's a lot. And Eckler had no signs of showing down until he turned 29 last year, and suddenly, he was pretty mediocre. That's my biggest concern with Kamara is that 29
And
wall.
Kamara doesn't have a ton of mileage either on him. He spent his early part of the career splitting a lot of his carries with Mark Ingram, and he's always been part of a 2-back system there in New Orleans.
Yeah, well, we haven't talked about the 2-back part yet. Let's take a look and see what his usage has been over his career here. I mean, he's catching 80 balls his rookie year here, 80 balls his first 4 years.
Yeah, Drew Brees loved to dump it to his running backs.
Yeah, exactly. But to me, you can't make the case he wasn't being used and getting beating on his body. He had 80 catches each of those games.
Well, he could have been used more and been the top running back in the league, but also Mark Ingram was one of the.
Yeah, I remember Pierre
top
Thomas and Ingram.
Well.
Like that team leaned on the running game a lot. It was definitely a split backfield, but like the gross of what they were splitting was a big pie. There was a lot of use. This is not like he didn't play much his first couple of years and saved tread on his tires. He's been very productive his whole career here. And so I worry. He's on my do not draft list this year. To me, you're asking for him to break down, and I don't want to risk one of my top picks breaking down where he's going compared to the other younger options that are there: Pacheco, Rashid White, James Cook, Mixon.
Yeah, I think Alvin Kamara is going to be I think he's going to produce more value for where people are going to draft him. Yeah, he's going to fall in the draft. I think I wouldn't grab him as my first or second pick. No, I'm hoping to steal Kamara in the draft. That's who I want to be my draft steal.
Yeah, no, I mean, no one's saying take him in the first or second round at all, right? So he's going 66 here. So if we divide that by 12, we're talking about 5th or 6th round. That's typically when you're drafting your RB2. So, and so the question is if you're looking at what your choices would be for RB2s, it kind of is like going from here to here. And again, this is just drafting style. To me, I'd rather have Najee Harris, even Javonte Williams, and I can get them a little bit later. To me, they're a safer RB2 bet. I want the guy who's not going to get hurt, who's going to show up every week. And because when I play against you, if he's there and he's a top 5, you're doing great. But if he's not there, you're going to lose just because he's not there. If he is there and he's doing great for you, I'm hoping that my sleepers can overcome that. Now, I win my leagues by taking low risk first and second round players, meaning RB1s and RB2s, because running backs get injured the most, and then trying to bring in sleepers. I'm also hoping I'm going to draft these rookies back here and hope that they hit. But I don't want to risk these guys getting hurt. I see a significant risk there with Kamara. I'll put him in orange. He's one of the guys we haven't agreed on. And well, we haven't even talked about the split backfield yet. They were very high on Kendre Miller last year. He could cut into this a little bit. They also have a goal line back here. They didn't seem to use him at all last year, but they brought in Williams, who was the leader in touchdowns the year before. That's just another small risk factor. But Cam makes a great point that Kamara's always shared his touches, and he's always been the best player on the field. I also don't know about this team. To me, this is a team that could go either way. Derek Carr really ruined the Raiders his last year there. He's getting older. I don't have a lot of faith in Derek Carr. I don't know who their second receivers are going to be or what's going on at tight end. If Kamara, for example, gets banged up in the beginning of the year and they go 0-5 or 1-4, they might just start tanking the whole season. I don't see the Saints being a competitive team this year, and that worries me. So those are a lot of the risk factors that I see.
And they're deep in they're eating their own cap right now. You know, they're in negative cap space, so they can't really make any moves. So
yeah, and they need to make moves. They're missing, they're missing. They need a number 2 receiver, right? They have a lot of needs over there. And Carr, I think Carr is like in the bottom 5 quarterbacks in the league. I wouldn't want him on my fantasy team at all. And if Carr can't throw it, everyone's just going to key on Kamara. So there's a lot of risk factors there. There's definitely a high ceiling for Kamara there. Anyone else have anything on Kamara? We're actually almost to our game tip-off here. So let's fast forward just a little bit more. Aaron Jones, I don't feel like he has a viable backup here. He doesn't pass the age test for me. So I have him in red, do not draft for me. We'll have to save some of this conversation for later. To me, he's in that 29-year-old basket. He was hurt a lot last year. He wasn't really reliable in fantasy last year. Kenneth Walker, I love Zach Charbonnet, so I don't like Kenneth Walker. He's always seems to get banged up, and this is, I think, a true timeshare because Zach was a second-round pick last year. They invested a lot in him. They're going to play him. Pacheco, he looks like all Kansas City has. If they don't bring somebody else in, I think there's good opportunity there. Rashid White, I feel like for sure his usage carried him last year. He's not that good. I watched every game of his. He's not that good in the running game at all. He's great in the passing game. They should draft someone who can be first and second down, and that worries me with drafting Rashid White. I like James Cook a lot, unless they bring in someone back to be the goal line back there. A-Chain, way too injury risk. Mostert, way too old. I'm not drafting any of these guys. I feel like Henry, they're going to not use Henry like they used to. The whole offense was built around him there, but even still, I think he's solid here. Jacobs doesn't have a good backup, so he should get all the
Jacobs has AJ Dillon signed with the Packers.
Did he sign back? Okay.
Yeah, for a $1 million.
To me, he's trash. I mean, I would not want him on my
fantasy. Oh, yeah, he is. But for $1 million, I think it's fine. It's only $1 million.
I think Derrick Henry will be top 2 in rushing again, just like he was last year. He was behind a terrible O-line in Tennessee. He's going behind a great O-line there in Baltimore. I mean, I love Henry.
I'll say top 5.
The whole offense was built around him. He got every carry there. I think he's not going to get every carry, and it's going to be good for him. He'll be very productive in the carries he gets, but they will significantly limit him with his usage.
They got Dobbins coming back too.
Yeah, I don't know if Dobbins will be. I have him on my free agent list. I'd actually like to see like Minnesota or someone sign Dobbins, or Dallas.
He's a free agent. He's actually a free agent.
I don't know for sure. He was on my free agent list. Maybe they
Okay.
thought he was going to get cut. Yeah, everyone loved him in college. ETN is a guy. Tank Bisbee was not playable last year. Jonathan Taylor doesn't really have a good backup. I expect both these teams to draft rookies, even with well, maybe with AJ Dillon coming back, they don't draft a rookie. They don't draft someone here. Saquon, clearly the starter in Philly. Kind of, if you notice a trend here, not only are the top backs good, but they really don't have somebody who cuts into their carries at all. So that really shows you how important this is. To be a top 10 running back, you can't be somebody who has a situation like Kenneth Walker. And so if you're thinking, oh, he looks so flashy, so spectacular, I see those plays too, but it just, the odds are against it when he's got such a quality backup there who's going to cut into his numbers. That's the same thing I would make for Nick Chubb. All right, so that's going to wrap up our fantasy football running back edition. We'll be back again breaking down the receivers next week, also looking into the actual rookies. And what we're going to do now is jump over to coverage of our game of the night. All right, so we're going to queue